In my last video I asked myself, can a camera make me want to shoot again? So you can't figure that out at home, you have to go out and shoot. So I'm just heading out today. With me the Sony A7CR, the 40mm f2.5 and my small Wotancraft bag. That's it. Let's go. So let's start right here. Trying to be creative. Today I'm walking through my hometown. This week in Cologne it is kind of cold, windy and rainy, but photography has this way of keeping you warm. My first frame, the Kranhäuser from this side, looking straight through them. I will try it centered first. Okay, alright, I've got the centered version, now I'm breaking that on purpose. Same view, but more tension, and suddenly the lines are pulling you into the frame. I'm shooting it horizontal. And vertical. Honestly, both can work very well here. Okay, the Kranhäuser are not enough visible from here. But there's something interesting. But honestly speaking, this is not what I wanted to shoot today. It was pretty windy on the bridge, so the next more sheltered spot is perfect, because when your hands start shaking, shooting gets difficult pretty quickly. Okay, second stop, right underneath the Kranhäuser, up close. This is all about lines and details, and there's plenty of that right here. The sky today is basically a giant softbox, and that's exactly what I wanted, because I don't have to fight harsh light, and using the viewfinder is way easier than in the snow in my last video. "40mm is a great everyday focal length. It is not too tight, it is not too wide. It forces me to commit. So here I'm looking for shapes and geometric details. There are a lot of reflections in a glass. I usually bring a polarizer with me because it helps me to get reflections under control quickly. Sometimes you want them, sometimes you don't. Okay, this little motorcycle adds an interesting detail. I think I will shoot it because it's underneath the Kranhäuser. I'm taking a quick shot of her, just as a sense of scale for how big this is. Next, I'm stepping back from the Kranhäuser. Again, means less details, more of the big picture. For that I wanted to go to the other side of the river, but let's see what the high water allows today. Honestly, your own hometown can look pretty boring. Not because it is, but because I've seen it too many times. So I'm committing to one thing, only one motive, the Kranhäuser, and shooting them from 3 different distances. For me that's a pretty good exercise. I have a reduced setup, only one motive, and the familia starts to feel new again. And honestly speaking, seeing Cologne through your eyes, I mean, you shared so beautifully in the comments from time to time, let me appreciate my own environment more again. I like the distance here because it keeps the Kranhäuser part of the city, not just an isolated object. And this has another benefit, because out here everything is more quiet, more calm, fewer people, more space, and I like that. Okay, the weather isn't spectacular, I want to use that. I mean, there's no dramatic light, but there are many wet surfaces and puddles on the ground. Okay, I don't have to find a puddle now, because the high water works quite well, but I can just say it's worth searching for them, because they can make a grey day like this feel very exciting again. Sometimes you're waiting for situations like this. So always look for unusual objects on the ground that you can use in your composition. As a tip, the last perspective. Most of the people shoot the Kranhäuser from the side. I prefer the hero shot straight on. Unfortunately, because of the high water, I won't be able to photograph the Kranhäuser centered this time. I think it will have to be enough for today. I'm too close, so I try to create some distance. Still too close. I think this focal length has its limits in architectural spaces. Okay, in the walk I tried a few different things. Here in the office I thought them out. I will go through the spots briefly. For each spot I will show you 2 photos I keep, 1 that I drop, and I will tell you what I would do differently next time. If you want to follow the walk by yourself, I will also share a few tips per spot. My goal on the Severinsbrücke was this specific view, following the street canyon and looking sideways under the crane houses, and that only works from this spot. I will keep this photo because it is very close to what I had in mind, and a slightly off-centered perspective gives the leading lines more energy. I feel that the vertical version works a little bit better because it pulls the eye deeper into the image and makes the crane houses feel more monumental. What do you think? I also keep this photo, even though it wasn't my original goal, because it shows the crane houses as a group, clearly separated with nice details and no distractions. A calm, clear view of the architecture itself. This one I dropped because the railing feels too heavy and distracting instead of supporting the image. At the same time, I'm a little bit too far away, so the crane houses lose presence. Here's my photography tip. The key is your position. If you stand centered between the sides, you get a calm, symmetrical picture. But if you move just a little bit aside, the leading lines gain much more weight and lead the eye through the image with much more tension. One practical note: the bridge is very loud and vibrates a lot because of traffic and trains. So if you use a tripod, wait for a quieter moment. They come from time to time. My goal in Rheinauhafen was to reduce the iconic architecture into lines and symmetry. At the same time, I wanted to bring scale into the image so you really understand the size. I keep this photo because it reduces the architecture to lines and symmetry and even negative space. At the center, the lines of the glass base seem to develop on their own. A clean graphic image without distraction. I also keep this photo because it shows the Rheinauhafen as an experience. I mean, grey weather, great architecture, and then a small color accent from the scooter as a contrast. This person breaks up the scene a little bit and adds scale. This one I dropped because the viewpoint isn't clear enough. The old building dominates, the crane house sits on top, and the person is a bit too small. Next time I would probably move closer and shift the camera to the right so that the old building and the runner leads towards the crane house and you feel more part of the scene. The Rheinauhafen looks like it's car-free and during weekdays it's quieter, but there are always delivery cars and service cars driving around, so if you want a calm composition, you will need a bit of patience. Don't go fully underneath the crane house, but stay a few steps before and look up. That's how the structure becomes strongest. The balconies are layering more clearly and the building gets more depth. You can almost feel the structure. But that's only working at the first crane house when you're coming from the bridge, because the other crane houses don't have these balconies. My goal at the Pollerwiesen was the frontal hero shot of the crane houses, even though I first approached them from the side. I still keep this photo because it shows the crane houses as part of the beautiful urban landscape, and the grass adds an entry point so that the place becomes easier to read. I also keep this photo because it feels like I earned it. Suddenly a few people in the frame, moving within a very static setting, and that contrast stays with me. Not a perfect photo, but an honest one. Well, this shot I dropped for obvious reasons. I couldn't get a centered view due to the high water level and the image lacks space on both sides, and I wasn't able to fix it by stepping back. For this shot I simply needed more wide angle. And this is what it could have looked like. One important thing to know: check the water level before you go, because it changes often and decides how close you can get and what images are even possible. That can be a limitation if you had a very specific shot in mind, but it can also be an opportunity because high water creates new foregrounds, reflections, or unusual framing. And one last photography tip: waiting can pay off. These cargo ships add context to the image and pass quite often, but if you're really patient you can even catch a rowing boat like this, and I find that almost documentary in a way. This was definitely not a perfect photo walk. Not everything worked, but a few things did. But that's exactly what makes it interesting for me, going out and taking photos even if things don't go as planned. And since this combination is so small and light, I actually enjoy taking it out with me at the moment. Let's see where it goes next.